afternoon, fantasy football fanatics out there. Anyone tuning into this show, I greatly appreciate the love and support. These last few weeks have been extremely fun for me. From the fantasy football aspect of things, I can actually help you guys win and gals win your league with these top 10 rankings that I've been putting out. I've finished the quarterback position. If you missed it, in case you missed it, check it out on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel as well, Facebook, and any audio podcasting platform. That goes for the quarterbacks episode, that goes for the running backs episode, and it goes as well for today's episode, the top 10 fantasy football wide receivers on my list. Who does Ryan Thomas, yours truly, have as his top 10 fantasy football wide receivers for the 2021 fantasy football season? I want to let you guys know that as well as fantasy football discussion, there's always room to discuss combat sports. The last episode that I recorded was a Where Will Gable Steveson Land? The hottest prospect inside the combat sports world, whether he goes to the WWE, whether he goes to the UFC, whether he goes to Bellator, whether he goes to AEW, or, yes, the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills were rumored to have talked to Gable Steveson about his desire to play in the National Football League. I talked about that and much, much more on the last episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, so check it out. Enjoy the show. A little something for everybody. You got combat sports discussion, you have fantasy football drafts, and I'm helping you prepare for so that you can win your league. With that being said, the toughest top 10 that I've put together all fantasy football offseason long is the wide receivers. The toughest top 10, and it is safe to say why the wide receiver position is the toughest to rank inside the fantasy football, I guess, virtual reality of fantasy football. And it is because points per reception leagues, or better abbreviated as PPR, has changed fantasy football forever. As NFL offenses have continued to change, I should say, points per reception leagues have become the forefront of fantasy football. When you are sitting there with your buddies and you're looking at who you need to draft to make your team great, how to win your league, you have to come away with wide receivers that get what I like to call a high target share. A high target share means that the quarterback is highly targeting this receiver. The more targets that a receiver has inside an NFL offense, the better, especially when he can catch and create yards after catch. That is what has dictated this top 10 to me. That is what has put some guys on this top 10 and has left some other receivers off this list. But I don't think this top 10 is outlandish. I don't think this top 10 is going to fool anyone. I don't think this top 10 is going to make people think, why does Ryan have these guys in his top 10? What the hell is Ryan Thomas thinking, putting these players in his top 10? Are you kidding me? You won't be thinking that. I think there are enough intriguing options inside this top 10 ranking to be highly believable that this particular player, that I'm going to be talking about in just a moment, belongs in the top 10, has the skill set to be a top 10 fantasy football wide receiver for years to come. And he's a young buck in this league. And that is none other, number 10 out of the top 10, CeeDee Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, when the Dallas Cowboys entered the draft a few years ago and selected CeeDee Lamb, I thought that it was one of the biggest steals of the first round. I thought it was the rich getting richer. You look at Dallas's offense, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Ezekiel Elliott, and obviously Dak Prescott. Hopefully, for their sake, Dak Prescott is 100%. And putting this top 10 together, putting CeeDee Lamb in this discussion as a top 10 wideout is tough for some people to wrap their mind around. But closely watch the gift that keeps on giving every NFL offseason or every season leading up to the regular NFL season, and that is HBO's Hard Knocks. And I have come away extremely impressed with CeeDee Lamb and the physicality, the agility, the hops, as the kids call it, the speed. CeeDee Lamb checks off every single box, and I think CeeDee Lamb will become the wide receiver one of the Dallas Cowboys this season. It's a bold claim, being that Amari Cooper is out there in Dallas still. But CeeDee Lamb was a gift that fell right into the lap of Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. And I think CeeDee Lamb is a supreme talent. I had him ranked pre-draft a couple years back as the number 1 wide receiver of the draft class. I really like CeeDee Lamb. I'm high on CeeDee Lamb. I'm on the CeeDee Lamb bandwagon, and I have CeeDee Lamb as my 10th best receiver for you to draft in the top 10 2021 fantasy football list. Moving on to number 9 is Los Angeles Chargers wideout Keenan Allen. Now, Keenan Allen has had his fair share of injuries over the years, but Keenan Allen has been Mr. Consistent. Keenan Consistent is what I like to call him. When out on the field, you know that the target share is there. You know that the yards are going to be there. And you also know that due to the skill set of Keenan Allen physically, few guys in the National Football League can cover him. It's not because he's fast. It's because he's fast and he's big and he's strong. He's a very rare blend of physicality at the wide receiver position. And you add in the fact that Justin Herbert is the quarterback, the guy that's slinging that rock, slinging it better than anybody had ever done as a rookie inside the National Football League. He had the best single rookie season for any quarterback in NFL history, and I think it's going to continue. Might there be a little bit of a drop-off in Herbert's numbers? Maybe, but I think Keenan Allen is the man there as long as he stays healthy. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense as well, but do not have any fear when looking at a CeeDee Lamb or a Keenan Allen just based on how many mouths there are to feed in those offenses. You know that the big dog has to eat at the end of the day. He might be the last of the bowl, but rest assured, he's going to move the dogs out of the way to get his food. CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, these are studs at 10 and 9. If you end up with one of these guys, you should have no trepidation as far as taking either one of these players, even though they rank 10 and 9 in my top 10. That's just how good this position is. That's just how deep this position is, and that's how talented and unique a time we're living in as an NFL football fan to have all these top flight receivers to choose from. Number 8, a receiver that I think was one of the best receivers in the NFL last year, and it's amazing for me to say that, being that he himself was a rookie, none other than Justin Jefferson. And when I made this top 10, I had a real hard time putting it together, as I said from the beginning of the show. But Justin Jefferson was that guy for Minnesota last year. To trade a player the caliber of Stefan Diggs and to get that extra first and to get some extra picks from Buffalo only to replace Diggs with this kid, it was a great move for both sides. For as great as Diggs was for Buffalo, Justin Jefferson was very, very good for the Minnesota Vikings out of LSU. And he went from purple and gold to purple and gold once again. And Justin Jefferson really shocked me, really turned a lot of heads. I wasn't the only guy out there that avidly watches every single football game that you can that thought, wow, that guy blew past any expectations that I had, and he's a real one. This guy's going to be around a long time. He is going to be a hot commodity in fantasy drafts this year. He was a stud receiver this year, and I think putting him 8th, people look at that and say, man, based on the rookie year that he had, you're going to put him at 8? I'm putting him in the top 10 coming off his rookie season. I think that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson, number 8. I think that's a solid, pick to put him at in this top 10, the 8th best wide receiver in fantasy football. Next up for the Tennessee Titans, none other than A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has some company now in Tennessee. The Titans made one of the biggest trades of the NFL offseason, acquiring all-pro wideout Julio Jones. Will that help or hurt A.J. Brown? Will that help or hurt Derrick Henry? I don't think so. Like I said about CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen, you can even say it about Justin Jefferson as well, with Adam Thielen in the building and Dalvin Cook as well. There are a full complement of balanced options in those offenses. It's really the question of quarterback-wise, CeeDee Lamb's got Dak Prescott, Keenan Allen's got Justin Herbert, Justin Jefferson has Kirk Cousins, A.J. Brown has Ryan Tannehill. Now, if I were to do a quarterback ranking, I would say, Herbert, Dak, Cousins, and Tannehill, or maybe Tannehill ahead of Cousins at this point. But that's not what we're doing. We're ranking how these players can affect your team week in and week out for fantasy football purposes, right? And A.J. Brown is one of those game breakers. He's one of those guys that could take a 5-yard pass and turn it into a 80-yard touchdown. Those types of players only come along once every 10 to 15 years. And A.J. Brown is one of those guys. Lightning in a bottle, snaky fast, the elusiveness is off the charts, and he's somebody that can turn a big play into an even bigger play, a small play into a medium play into a big play into a touchdown. I mean, he is a big playmaking machine at the wide receiver position for the Tennessee Titans. He's somebody that everyone that plays Tennessee should look out for, and he's someone that I think will only get better as the years wear on. So A.J. Brown listed as my 7th best wide receiver in fantasy football. I think it's finally time to give him his due, finally time to see this player for who he is, a game-breaking talent, somebody that can be that playmaker out there for your fantasy squad and that can average 20 to 30 points a week based on his target share, based on if you have bonus points in your leagues like I do, 4 points for a 40-yard touchdown, 2 points for a 40-yard catch, extra on top of what they get via yards, via catch, and obviously via touchdown. So guys like A.J. Brown are very high on my list, and that's where he is at 7. Number six, Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan is a stud. This Falcons team is far better than the way they've played over the course of the last, shall we say, 2-3 years. Gone is Dan Quinn. You have a new head coach in the building. I'm hoping that this offense is somewhat a let-it-rip offense. Just let Matty Ice do his thing at this point with the amount of years he's put in the league, with the amount of solid seasons he has under his belt. I would hope that the Falcons would let Matt Ryan somewhat dictate the pace of the offense, somewhat be a general out there for the Falcons. And if that is the case, if the Atlanta Falcons do what I think they should do, Calvin Ridley will have a very good year. Maybe his best year yet, which says a ton. He was a stud wideout last year and was someone that most fantasy analysts rank as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. But with the changes that are going on in Atlanta, I can't confidently rank Calvin Ridley as that top 5 type wideout. We'll see if the changes hurt or help Calvin Ridley. I think the bar is nicely set here in this top 10 with Calvin Ridley being the 6th best wideout in this top 10. Number 5. Okay, number 5, we're moving into the top 5, people. Moving into the top 5. This top 5 is, oh my gosh, if I ended up with even one of these receivers for my fantasy football team, I would be elated. Now, depending on the draft you're in, you could be in a dynasty league, you could be in a keeper league. You might end up with 2 of these top 5 receivers on your team and on my list. You might. I'm not sure. You might. But if you do, you got a real damn good advantage at winning your league. Real good chance of winning your league. So, number 5, this man is a beast. DK Metcalf, Seattle Seahawks, 6'4.5". I think they're being a little light in the loafers with that height estimate. 6'5.5", I think is more, accurate. 220, 30 pounds of just pure muscle. A guy that runs like a deer, has cheetah speed for the size that he has. DK Metcalf, I've said this so many times on my show. When I look at a player, try to compare him to a past pro, DK Metcalf is the equivalent of T.O. and Randy Moss having a baby. And that baby becomes DK Metcalf. Terrell Owens and Randy Moss are both in Canton. They're enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So me saying that is not necessarily me saying that DK Metcalf is a Hall of Fame wideout. DK Metcalf has the physical skill set to become a potential all-time great in the National Football League. An all-time great. And this is a guy that was supposed to be picked in the first round, that everyone and their grandmother thought was not a first-round pick leading up to the draft for whatever goddamn reason, I don't know. But he falls out of the first round and Pete Carroll plucks him out of thin air and puts him right in and lets him do his thing. People said, well, his route tree is pretty limited. Well, when your route tree is a deep route, you're 6'5", you run a 4.4 on a light day. Have fun trying to stop that. If that's the one route he can run, and that's not even true. DK Metcalf is a solid route runner as an NFL wideout, and it was even tough for me putting him in this position at 5, but it just goes to show you the emergence of DK Metcalf is for real. He is for real. He is a legitimate force in the National Football League. I think me putting him at 5 going into the season isn't even good enough. I think by the end of the year, DK Metcalf could potentially be a top 3 fantasy football wideout. Boom. Mic drop. Moving on to the 4th best wide receiver on my top 10 2021 fantasy football wide receivers list. None other than second-year Arizona Cardinal DeAndre Hopkins. His first year in Arizona with Kyler Murray was a smashing success. I'm sitting there watching the Arizona Cardinals and my Buffalo Bills, and I see Kyler Murray roll out to his left, chuck the ball into the air, and DeAndre Hopkins plucks it away from not 1, not 2, but 3 defenders. 3 defenders. Hail Murray, that was the last game that the Bills lost in the regular season, only to go on a torrid run heading into the AFC title game against the defending Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs, coming up short in that one. But that was the last regular season game that Buffalo lost, and it was just DeAndre Hopkins just boom. That's it. Just putting his hands in the air, and that was all she wrote. That's how special this guy is. He went from one team to another, didn't miss a beat. So I have DeAndre ranked 4th on this list because one man had a better year than DeAndre Hopkins did last year, and that man is none other. The drum roll, you guys that are watching this on the stream, see it in the graphics. Stefan Diggs of the Buffalo Bills, one of the biggest seasons that anybody has ever had at the wide receiver position. Literally the biggest season that any Buffalo Bills wide receiver has ever had in a single season in franchise history, shattering records held by the great Eric Moulds. As well, Andre Reed, who was in Canton. Stefan Diggs. When the Buffalo Bills made this move for Stefan Diggs, I'm on the phone with a good buddy of mine. We're talking about what the Bills need. It'd be nice if they went out and got like a Stefan Diggs or maybe, one of these receivers that was on the chopping block. It would be nice, Stefan Diggs' name, he gets thrown out, and then boom, 20 minutes later, I kid you not, Bills have sent a first and a couple mid-round picks, few mid-round picks, I should say, to the Minnesota Vikings for Stefan Diggs. And I'm thinking, Stefan Diggs, a new wide receiver. There were some issues with Stefan Diggs in Minnesota. Guys were saying he wasn't a team player. Guys were saying that, he really wanted the ball a lot. He was a gimme guy. I'm open guy, whatever you want to call it. And Stefan Diggs, outside of Josh Allen, is the leader of this offense. This team, the Buffalo Bills, dramatically changed when Stefan Diggs walked into that locker room. And you're not hearing that from me. You're hearing that from Deion Dawkins. You're hearing that from players that played on the defensive side of the ball, like Trey White, that lined up against him in training camp, lined up against him leading up to, practice after practice, leading up to regular season games, of course. Trey White goes out and says, this guy was the missing piece, was the missing edge that this team needed. It was a match made in heaven, not just Stefan Diggs and Josh Allen, but Stefan Diggs and the Buffalo Bills. I am so happy and so thankful that Stefan Diggs was traded to the Buffalo Bills. I would make that trade 50 to 100 times over again. I have no regrets about that trade whatsoever. Nothing could ever deter me from that. It was a magical season last year for the Buffalo Bills, and Stefan Diggs was a major reason why it happened. Now, for your fantasy football team, these top 5 receivers, Metcalf, Hopkins, 5-4-3, Stefan Diggs, all of these 3 receivers that I've rattled off in this top 5 thus far are high target share wideouts. Stefan Diggs was targeted more than anybody. He caught more passes than anybody. He had more receiving yards than anybody. And he led the Buffalo Bills in receiving touchdowns. He is in fantasy heaven with this Buffalo Bills, yes, Brian Daboll offense. Once upon a time, I wanted Brian Daboll gone. And then Stefan Diggs came and changed everything. He allowed Brian Daboll to spread this offense out completely. He allowed Brian Daboll to be a little bit more, shall I say, snazzy with this offense. God bless him. I love Stefan Diggs. I just got his jersey, a white one, for the away games that I'll be going to this year. I am so excited to have him back for year number 2 in Buffalo. Year number 1 was nothing short of a massive, massive success. So with that said, Stefan Diggs, the number 3 top 10 fantasy football wide receiver on my top 10 list. And number 2 is the biggest game-breaking talent in the National Football League, the guy that, as I talked about with A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill can turn a 5-yard gain into a 50-yard gain. He's got the best quarterback in the National Football League throwing to him in Pat Mahomes, and he hasn't missed a beat. If anything, I would say confidently that Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in the NFL, and he has been for the last 3-4 years, right? So why not put him in the top 3? Why not put him at 2? How is that wrong? I know Buffalo Bills fans might be a little bit curious as to why I rated Hill ahead of Diggs, but Hill has done it longer on that team than Diggs has, obviously, in Buffalo. That's really why I have Hill at number 2. So far, if you're just tuning into the show, the toughest top 10 that I've ever put out at any position leading into a season, we have, to give you a recap leading into the top rated wide receiver. Number 10 is CeeDee Lamb. Number 9 is Keenan Allen. Number 8 is Justin Jefferson. Number 7 is A.J. Brown. Number 6 is Calvin Ridley. Number 5 is DK Metcalf. Number 4 is DeAndre Hopkins. Number 3 is Buffalo Bills wideout Stefan Diggs. Number 2 is Kansas City Chief speedster Tyreek Hill. So with that being said, if you're just tuning in, you're checking the show out at the perfect time. The number 1 fantasy football wide receiver for the 2021 NFL season is none other than Green Bay Packers wideout Devonta Adams. Take it from me. I had Devonta Adams on my team last year in a season that lost Christian McCaffrey on my team. Yes, I had McCaffrey and Adams on my team. McCaffrey was a keeper. I'm not going to be keeping him anymore in the league that I'm in. He's past his years. He goes back into the draft pool. Somebody else is going to get him. I'm not, because I won the league. I'm picking 10th. But I also have a feeling that Devonta Adams won't be available either. This guy put together one of the best single seasons in NFL history, along with Stefan Diggs. And Devonta's season was what allowed and really was the catalyst for another most valuable MVP caliber season, MVP award-winning season from Aaron Rodgers. And I think Devonta, being that he's in a contract year, he wants his cookies, he wants his cheddar, whatever the kids call money these days, I don't know. But Devonta Adams wants to get paid. And if anybody in the National Football League at the wide receiver position deserves to get paid, it is number 17 of the Green Bay Packers, Devonta Adams. This guy is a phenomenal player. I enjoy watching him. Whenever the Packers are on prime time, I'm watching not just for Aaron Rodgers, but I'm watching for Devonta Adams as well. I love this top 10. I really enjoyed putting this top 10 together. And Devonta Adams rounds out my list, the top 10 fantasy football wide receivers in the 2021 NFL season. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning into the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. As the ticker says, follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take, as well as on Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take. So much to discuss for your fantasy football team. If you listen, if you watch, you win. Stay tuned for more on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, as I have an awesome guest joining me this weekend to discuss our expectations as well in the Buffalo Bills 2021 season preview series. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for tuning in, and take care.